Season 2 of House of the Dragon is in the making, so here's a full recap of Season 1 to make sure we're ready for new episodes. My name is Guy and this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. The events of House of the Dragon are set many years before Game of Thrones, when the Targaryen dynasty was at the height of their power thanks to a roster of dragons. The storyline revolves around Rhaenyra Targaryen, who is the daughter of King Viserys, and Queen Aemma, who is pregnant. Her best friend is Alicent Hightower, who is the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King and closest advisor. At the heart of the show is a fight to determine who will succeed the king. Rhaenyra is the only child of Viserys, but she's a girl. And years prior, the Great Council decided they preferred a king instead of a queen. So the king hopes that Aemma is pregnant with a boy, or else his brother Daemon could inherit his crown. And nobody wants that because he's crazy violent. To celebrate the coming of his new heir, the king organizes a tournament. Sitting with the royal family are the Hightowers, as well as the Velaryons. The Velaryons are a powerful house. They have a strong naval fleet and control many exports to King's Landing. Daemon partakes in the tournament and is defeated by Criston Cole. More on him later. While this is happening, Aemma goes into labor and it's not going to plan. So they operate Aemma to save the boy, but both Aemma and the newborn die. A funeral is organized to mark the event. In the aftermath, Otto Hightower asks his daughter Alicent to comfort the king in his chambers, and she does. Meanwhile, Daemon is throwing a party to celebrate. Daemon believes he's next in line since Viserys does not have a son and his wife is dead. He even goes as far as calling Viserys' dead newborn heir for a day. When news of this party reaches the king, he's very angry. Daemon and his mistress Mysaria leave King's Landing for Dragonstone, the historical seat of House Targaryen. That's where the heir to the throne usually lives. Eventually, Viserys names his daughter Rhaenyra heir to the throne. But will the realm accept her as legitimate, or will they prefer a male heir? One thing is sure, the small council, and that includes Viserys, do not prepare Rhaenyra to rule. Instead, the king's advisor want him to remarry. Otto Hightower wants the king to marry his daughter Alicent, and the Velaryons want him to marry their daughter Laena. While this is happening, Rhaenys, who was skipped in the line of succession because she was a woman, tells Rhaenyra that she'll never be queen if the king remarries and has a male heir. In the midst of it all, Rhaenyra chooses Criston Cole as her protector. She seems attracted to him. But that's not all. On top of everything, Daemon plans to marry Mysaria on Dragonstone, and he stole a dragon egg to put in the crate of their future baby. This is a tradition usually reserved for the baby of the heir to the throne. So the small council decides it's time to confront Daemon and retrieve the egg. Otto and the king's squad head to Dragonstone. Daemon is not cooperating and threatens them with violence. But Rhaenyra arrives on her dragon on time to save the day. She tells her uncle that he went too far, and she successfully retrieves the egg. The next day, the king announces that he will marry Alicent Hightower. The Velaryons are not happy about that because of their long-lasting alliance with the Targaryens, and Rhaenyra feels betrayed because neither Alicent nor her father told her about this plot twist. On top of the succession drama, the realm is faced with a growing threat in the Stepstones. This rogue pirate called the Crab Feeder is putting at risk the Velaryon trade routes, but the king doesn't really want to fight the Crab Feeder because it could undermine his popularity among regular folks. So Corlys and Daemon partner behind the king's back to take down the Crab Feeder. Daemon rides his dragon and burns down some of the Crab Feeder's army, but they retrieve in caves. By the way, if you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe for more. Back at the Red Keep, the king throws a party to celebrate the second birthday of his son Aegon to Alicent Hightower. They organize a hunting session with lords of the realm, some of whom expect the king to name Aegon his heir instead of Rhaenyra since he's male. Rhaenyra is visibly hurt and mad at the whole situation, and the king makes it worse when he scolds her in front of everyone for refusing to marry. so she leaves the party and rides her horse to the forest. Criston Cole follows her, and they spend the night in the woods, where Rhaenyra is attacked by a boar, and she takes her anger on the boar and kills it. When Rhaenyra returns to the camp, everybody is impressed, especially after the king killed a stag in the most pathetic way possible. That night, Otto tells Alicent to convince the king to name their son Aegon heir to the throne. But Alicent disregards her father and advises the king on other matters. The king does not want to help Daemon and Corlys defeat the crab feeder because they went behind his back. But Alicent says he should do it anyway for the common good. The king agrees. She also advises Viserys to let Rhaenyra pick a husband for herself, and the king also agrees. Viserys and Rhaenyra have a heartfelt conversation. The king promises to never replace her as heir to his claim, no matter what people say. The next day on the battlefield, we're introduced to Vaemond Velaryon, the brother of Corlys Velaryon, and Laenor Velaryon, his son. The war isn't going great, so you'd expect Daemon to be happy to learn that the king pledges to help them defeat the crab feeder. But instead, Daemon bursts into anger. He wanted to win the war on his own, to prove his worth as heir to the throne. So Daemon decides to go all in before help from King's Landing can arrive. And in the end, Daemon and the Velaryons win the war. By the way, did you know that internet providers in the US can legally sell our data to advertisers? That's why I'm excited for today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, because they make it harder for big tech to collect our data by rerouting our network through their encrypted servers. If, like me, you enjoy working at your local coffee shop, ExpressVPN is a must because it protects our personal information from hackers. Is he drinking coffee or stealing my financial details? With ExpressVPN, we don't need to worry. In addition, ExpressVPN gives you unrestricted access to all parts of the internet, so if your favorite show is not available in your region, it might be available in Mexico. Or if you want to make this video viral in Switzerland, now you can. If you don't already have ExpressVPN, today is your chance because you can get 3 months free by using the special link in my description. And it is the best way to support the channel. Back in Westeros, Rhaenyra is on a mission to find a husband. But there aren't any suitable contendants, so she decides to return home. Coincidentally, Daemon is also on the way home as he returns from war. As he walks into the throne room, he's wearing a crown, so everyone is on edge. But Daemon gives the crown to Viserys and the two make up, at least for now. The family gathers outside. Rhaenyra and Alicent share a heartfelt moment and renew with each other. Then, Daemon and Rhaenyra have a different type of conversation. They talk about marriage. Daemon tells Rhaenyra to marry whoever, and that it doesn't matter since marriage is political anyway. Daemon is estranged from his wife who lives in the Vale. Later that night, Daemon lures Rhaenyra outside the castle. The two spend a night on the town, and they end up seeing a play. Rhaenyra learns that regular folks would prefer to be ruled by her brother Aegon since he's male, but she says their opinion is irrelevant. Daemon takes her to a brothel where they kiss. Now remember, Daemon is her uncle. When she returns home, Rhaenyra seduces Criston Cole and they sleep together. But this could put Criston in big trouble because as a Kingsguard, he swore an oath of chastity. While this is happening, Otto learns through his intelligence network that Rhaenyra and Daemon were seen coming out of the brothel together. So Otto tells the king, but the king gets mad at Otto. Alicent then confronts Rhaenyra about the whole situation, but she denies everything. Daemon, still drunk from the night before, is brought to the king who's very angry. The king says he's done with Daemon for good. Viserys is still angry when he meets with Rhaenyra. He tells her to take her responsibilities seriously. The king is done playing games. He tells Rhaenyra she'll get married to Laenor Velaryon, end of the story. Rhaenyra agrees, but throws Otto under the bus in passing. She says he doesn't give the king sound advice and puts the Hightower's own political ambitions before the king's best interests. So the king confronts Otto and fires him. Later that night, Rhaenyra is sent moon tea, a sort of morning after pill. to make sure she and Daemon will not have a baby. What nobody knows is that she had sex with Criston, not Daemon. The next scene takes place in the Vale, where Daemon kills his estranged wife. Meanwhile, the Targaryens head to Driftmark to arrange Rhaenyra's wedding to Laenor Velaryon. The king's reception is underwhelming, but negotiations between Viserys and Corlys go ahead anyway. Outside, Rhaenyra and Laenor decide to make the most of this arrangement, so they agree to marry and have children to fulfill their duty to the realm, and then they can do whatever they want. Rhaenyra can sleep with Criston, and Laenor can sleep with his boyfriend. On their way back to King's Landing, Criston suggests they should run away, marry, and live a quiet life far from political drama. But Rhaenyra says she must fulfill her royal duties and marry Laenor. Criston has a meltdown. His honor is on the line. It's a rainy day in King's Landing when Odo prepares to leave life at court behind. He and Alicent have a tense exchange. Odo tells Alicent that she must choose between Rhaenyra or her own children, because if Rhaenyra ascends the throne, she will have them all killed to assert her legitimacy. We are also introduced to the Strong family. Lionel is the new hand of the king, and Larys, his son, is scheming for power. Larys tells Alicent that Rhaenyra was brought moon tea, a hint that Rhaenyra might have lied to Alicent about her and Daemon. So Alicent asks Criston Cole, who is Rhaenyra's protector, for some info on what happened. But, plot twist, Criston confesses he slept with Rhaenyra. Criston feels guilty for breaking his oath and tells the queen he should be executed, to which Alicent replies, "It won't be necessary." Later, we see distinguished guests arriving at Laenor and Rhaenyra's wedding. It's a lavish event. Eventually, Daemon makes his entrance against the king's wish, but Viserys let it slide. He has a speech to make, and Daemon will not ruin that. That's when Alicent makes her late entrance. It's all very dramatic because she's wearing green, a symbolic color for House Hightower that can be interpreted as a rallying cry. Daemon flirts with Laena, then he flirts with Rhaenyra. Meanwhile, Laenor tells his boyfriend about Criston Cole and Rhaenyra, so he goes and talks with Criston, and it ends in bloodshed. Because it's a Game of Thrones wedding, of course. Criston kills Laenor's boyfriend before attempting to end his life outside. That's when Alicent arrives and stops him. After the events, the wedding wraps up in private. Everyone is sad. A major time jump happens, and we meet Rhaenyra a decade later as she's giving birth. It looks extremely painful. Alicent demands to see the baby immediately, so Laenor and Rhaenyra painfully make their way to the queen's chamber. When the king arrives to greet his new grandson, he looks terribly ill. We later learn that Rhaenyra's children are not Laenor's, they're Harwin Strong's bastards. But this family unit seems peaceful. Alicent begs the king to recognize that Rhaenyra's children are not legitimate, but Viserys does not wish to engage with this narrative. He says the consequences would be too dire for his family. If you like House of the Dragon and want to dig a little deeper, I have a whole series where I analyze main characters and the politics of House of the Dragon. We meet the royal children, with Rhaenyra's children sporting blue, the Velaryon color, and Alicent's children wearing green, the Hightower color. The children are hanging out in the dragon pit when the boys gift Aemond a pig to ridicule him because he does not have a dragon yet. We also meet Alicent's daughter, Helaena. She's a little strange and loves bugs a lot. Alicent is tough on her children, especially with Aegon. She echoes what her father told her. The Hightowers must win the Game of Thrones or die trying. But Aegon is not interested in playing politics. In the training yard, Criston Cole and Harwin Strong are training the boys. Criston Cole eventually hints at the fact that Harwin is the real father of Rhaenyra's children, and a fight ensues. Later, Lyonel Strong, who remains the Hand of the King, reprimands his son for putting their whole house at risk. At the small council, Rhaenyra makes an offer to Alicent in an attempt to squash the beef between their two factions. She suggests They marry Rhaenyra's son to Alicent's daughter to unite the two factions and avoid war, but Alicent refuses. Daemon and Laena are now married and live in Pentos, far from the politics of King's Landing. Daemon seems satisfied with his lavish life, but Laena is not so sure. When Laena goes into labor, the procedure does not go as planned. Instead of dying as Aemma did, she demands that her giant dragon Vhagar kill her. Back at the Red Keep, Lyonel Strong offers the king his resignation. Rumors of his son being the father of Rhaenyra's children are putting his family at risk, and he cannot stand that. The king refuses his resignation, but they agree that it would be better for Harwin to leave. Later, Rhaenyra and Laenor agree to leave for Dragonstone in an attempt to distance themselves and their family from danger. In the meantime, Alicent and Larys share dinner. Alicent complains about the influence of Lyonel Strong as Hand of the King and wishes for her father Otto to make a comeback as the king's main advisor. So, Larys springs into action and makes a deal with prisoners. He'll set them free and cut their tongues. In exchange, they'll do his dirty deeds. They accept, and Larys sends them on a killing mission to get rid of his own father and brother, thus forcing the king to bring back Otto as Hand of the King. But Alicent never asked for anyone to get murdered, and now she owes Larys. The royal family gathers on Driftmark for Laena's funeral. Tensions are high. Eventually, Rhaenyra and Daemon find themselves alone on the beach. Recent events made their position at court weaker. Rhaenyra and Daemon share an intimate moment together. Meanwhile, Aemond, who is still without a dragon, takes Laena's death as an opportunity to claim her giant dragon Vhagar for himself, and he succeeds. Upon his return to the castle, he's met by his cousins, and they fight. Aemond threatens the kids with a rock and calls them bastards, so Lucerys slashes his eye with a knife. Everyone convenes in the Great Hall. The parents are mad and they point fingers at each other. Viserys tries to calm the situation, but fails. Rhaenyra's side accuses Aemond of treason for suggesting her children are bastards. Alicent's side accuses Lucerys of recklessly bringing a knife to the fight in the first place. Viserys asks Aemond to tell who suggested to him that Rhaenyra's children were bastards. Instead of throwing his mother under the bus, he blames it on Aegon, who says, "Everyone knows, just look at them." So Viserys bursts into anger and pleads with his family to make peace. When Alicent realizes that the king won't punish Rhaenyra's side for the mutilation of her son, she takes matters into her own hands, steals Viserys' knife, lunges toward Rhaenyra, and slashes her arm. In the aftermath, Otto and Alicent meet. She's full of remorse and worries her reputation at court will take a hit, but her father does not seem to think it's a big deal. He says that Alicent's behavior is a sign that she's ready to play the Game of Thrones and win it. Plus, Aemond secured a giant dragon for their side. The next day, Laenor and Rhaenyra sit down to discuss. He apologizes for being an absent husband and father. He says he's willing to take his duties seriously now, but it's too little too late. Rhaenyra and Daemon already made up their minds. They plan to get married to strengthen Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. But before they can, they must free Rhaenyra from her marriage to Laenor. Their plan is simple. Laenor and his boyfriend must stage a fight in front of a witness. When the guards arrive, they'll find a burnt body presumed to be Laenor, but in reality, Laenor and his boyfriend escaped on a boat. With Laenor gone into exile, Rhaenyra and Daemon are free to get married. Another time jump happens. We're in Driftmark, where Rhaenys is exercising power as her husband's regent. That's because Corlys is at war in the Stepstones. But people start to speculate that Corlys might never come back because he was presumably injured, so questions about Driftmark's succession arise. Who should inherit Driftmark now that Laenor is dead? Should it go to Laenor's son Lucerys, even though he's a Velaryon in name only? Or should it go to Corlys's brother, Vaemond? So, the Targaryens and the Velaryons return to King's Landing to defend their claim. The king is so sick that he is now using narcotics to manage his pain, and the Hightowers are essentially ruling in his name. They pledge to support Vaemond's claim. The succession is to be decided in the throne room. At first, Otto presides over the procedure in place of Viserys, but eventually the king arrives and settles the matter himself. Driftmark will be inherited by Luke, and Vaemond gets the chop for saying that Luke was a bastard. Later that evening, the whole royal family gathers for dinner. The king gives a passionate speech in an attempt to reunite his family, but as soon as he leaves, the children start fighting after Aemond calls his cousins strong, a reference to their biological father. So peace is not likely to last after all. Rhaenyra and her allies return to Dragonstone. Later that night, Alicent and the king exchange final words. Alicent misunderstands Viserys' words and now believes that her husband's dying wish is to see their son Aegon on the throne. With the king dead, the Greens wish to proceed with Aegon's crowning as fast as possible. During a tense small council session, Criston Cole kills a dissident, which sends a clear message: comply with the Greens or die. To secure their line of succession, Otto advocates for the murder of Rhaenyra and Daemon, but Alicent thinks this is a terrible idea, so the Greens are divided. On top of that, nobody knows where Aegon is, so Otto and Alicent enlist distinct search parties to find him. If Eric and Arik find Aegon first, Otto will convince the future king to murder Rhaenyra and Daemon. If Criston and Aemond find Aegon first, Alicent will convince Aegon to spare Rhaenyra and Daemon. Otto's team manages to find Aegon first with the help of Mysaria, but in the end, Alicent's team gains custody of Aegon. So Alicent tells Otto they will not murder Rhaenyra and Daemon. Her father says it's a terrible mistake. For the first time, Alicent has power over her father. Later, Alicent meets with Larys, who tells her about Mysaria trafficking information to her father, so he sends his goons to burn down her house. Alicent meets with Rhaenys, who's held captive at the Red Keep. Alicent tries to convince her to join the Greens, but that conversation does not go anywhere. In the meantime, Otto forces lords to pledge their allegiance to the Greens. Those who refuse will pay the price. Later, Rhaenys is freed by one of the twins ahead of Aegon's coronation. The Dragon Pit is packed with hundreds, if not thousands, of cheering subjects. The Greens crown Aegon using various symbols of legitimacy like his crown and his sword. This takes place with the blessing of religious leaders. But suddenly, Rhaenys and her dragons spoil the party. We think she might kill the Greens, but she decides to spare them and heads to Dragonstone instead, where she tells Rhaenyra and Daemon that King Viserys is dead and the Greens already crowned Aegon. Rhaenyra goes into labor, but her baby does not survive, so the Targaryens hold a funeral. That's when Rhaenyra is given her father's crown, a strong symbol of legitimacy. Later, Rhaenyra is told that Otto Hightower came to offer her peace terms as per Alicent's wish. To Daemon's surprise, Rhaenyra says she'll think about it. This buys the Targaryens some time to think and assess their military and political situation. Luckily for Rhaenyra, Corlys Velaryon makes his return and pledges to help her claim to the throne, so Rhaenyra will definitely reject Otto's peace terms. Later, Rhaenyra sends her sons Jace and Luke on diplomatic missions. Luke is sent to Storm's End to lobby House Baratheon. Upon his arrival, he comes face to face with Vhagar and his cousin Aemond, with whom he has bad blood. House Baratheon appears to side with the Greens, so Luke gets ready to leave, but Aemond turns aggressive and wants to fight. But the Baratheons don't want any blood spilled under their roof, so they ask that the boys leave. Luke is then chased by his cousin, who rides a much bigger dragon. Dragon riders think they have full control of their dragons, But we learn that dragons have free will. When Luke's dragon attacks Aemon's dragon retaliates and kills Luke. If you like this video, you will definitely like this one. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and once again, thanks to ExpressVPN.